cybersecurity as it stands today is failing us, and it doesn't take an expert to realize that. It only takes opening the news and seeing the latest mass data breach, compromised.
Another episode of the Man in the Middle podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Malloy. This is an Ithaca Media podcast. And I have two guests today, two special guests who are joining me on the program, and they are Yuval Hertzog and Michael Loewy, and they are both co-founders of the Tide Foundation. Tide is a transformative, true zero trust technology and allows platform developers to lock their systems and grant access with no keys, with keys that no one will ever hold. And I want to welcome both my guests today. So Yuval and Michael, I want to thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And usually the way I start these conversations with guests on this program is just hearing about how you got into the cybersecurity space, but more generally the technology space, because I understand both of you have been around in deep tech and technology for quite some time, and I'd love to hear how you both got into this space. So I'll start with yourself, Yuval, if you don't mind. Just if you could tell us a bit about how you got interested in this space of technology.
Well, my beginning is actually very early. So I started meddling with technology when I was 6 years old, before I even learned how to read. And I actually started programming at that age. And from there, it's just was a rolling thing that grew from computers to electronics to anything science eventually, until I was picked up, I would say, recognized by the Israeli intelligence and was identified for one of the most lucrative military units in intelligence, where I spent almost a decade serving in one of the intelligence units, and dealing also with the cybersecurity or cyber warfare and cryptography. That was my introduction. And when I left and joined the commercial world, I joined the big 2000 boom years, where I joined a company that invented voice over IP. So I was one of the founders of, you could say, an industry. And so it's from infancy growing into something that today is used to run this show. That's one of the things, anything else in telecommunication. And from there, rolling on, dealing with different aspects of deep tech, landing a gig with Michael, which we have a relationship going 2 generations back. Maybe I can talk more about that.
Yeah, we have we have a long family history.
Oh, is that right? Okay, yeah. Well, maybe this is a good cue in for you, Mike. If you could tell us a bit about your origin story, and I'd love to hear how both of your journeys linked up and culminated in the Tide Foundation.
Yeah, sure. So our personal connection, we have our families originally from Europe, from Hungary, and survived World War II. Moved to Israel. Yuval's family stayed there. Mine ended up in Australia, but we've always had a connection. And one of the things that we've always bonded over was technology. So we've always been tinkerers, and we've tinkered with various projects together. Always in the back of our minds with an expectation that someday we will commercialize something together. My personal journey with technology doesn't start quite as early as Yuval's, but was quite early. I think both of us had built and sold technology, in our teens. And I studied commerce, but technology is always where I kind of leaned. Ended up building a software development and go-to-market company. So building products for high-end enterprise clients and greenfield startups. Sold that business, and then finally came out to play with Yuval.
Yeah, fantastic. And I just love it's like really beautiful to you had that family history between the two of you, and it's ended up continuing on into your commercial life as well. But so yeah, thanks for sharing, both of you. I mean, I want to get to one of the topics for today, and the reason that we actually initiated this conversation in the first place was because yourself, Michael, I know you have an upcoming talk at CyberCon in Melbourne, and one of them is titled "Achieving Cyber Herd Immunity." And I want to start this sort of topic around, and I'll throw it open to both of you, sort of explaining a bit about what is meant by herd immunity in the context of cybersecurity, because we're very familiar with that term thanks to COVID, that term of herd immunity. But how does that relate, and what sort of the parallels there with cybersecurity?
So for us, the introducing a new concept is because of the failed current paradigm of cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, as it stands today, is failing us, and it doesn't take an expert to realize that. It only takes opening the news and seeing the latest mass data breach, compromised infrastructure, and the reality for platform developers, security teams, IT teams today is they are playing this endless game of whack-a-mole and constantly monitoring activity, plugging known vulnerabilities, discovering another one, plugging that, endlessly building fortifications, and it's a game you can never win, because inevitably the breach occurs through a soft spot that you weren't aware of, through an unknown vulnerability. So constantly playing that whack-a-mole is going to end up in the current scenario, which is well recognized today, that the breach is inevitable. Now, how do you approach something, or how do you secure something, or how do you maintain the health of something when it's inevitable that you will get the virus, that the breach is inevitable? So the concept of herd immunity in cyber is to accept the reality that you're going to get breached. It's going to be the most horrific, highest privilege breach you can imagine. It's going to be your CTO or someone in your software supply chain with godlike access. Now, how do we make sure that when that happens, it becomes a non-event? And so, that required a new way of thinking. It required a new technology to enable that concept. And it also required acknowledging the root cause of the breach pandemic that we're seeing today, which, if you trace pretty much any mass data breach or any real significant attack, what you see is an attacker has compromised what's called authority in the system. So authority in the digital world is the power or the ability to execute a sensitive process, to unlock sensitive data, to authorize access to something. It could be literally a cryptographic key that someone has access to. It could be exploiting compromising the credentials of a super user in a system, that once you log in as that user, you can do anything you want. That authority today always lives somewhere on something, and someone always has access to it. So identifying that the root cause is compromising authority, and then looking at a way to say, okay, well, how can we make sure that that authority is not something that can be compromised, even when the breach occurs, even when that virus enters the system? And so that's the genesis of the approach. If I'm to kind of dive slightly deeper there, the way that
please.
we then extract that authority and make sure that that authority can't be compromised because it doesn't live in anyone's hands. We actually borrowed a phenomena from nature called swarm intelligence. So if you think of ants, probably an unlikely inspiration for cybersecurity technology, but if you look at the way ants and ant colonies work, any individual ant doesn't hold a master plan in its head. It's not a brilliant strategist. It performs a very basic task like build a tunnel, protect the clan. But an ant colony as as a collective actually manages to achieve like incredible feats. So they build these very complex tunnel systems. They wage war. They build bridges. They actually farm. They can farm fungi to feed the colony. But no individual ant, whether you pick up any ant, including the queen, you squash that ant, you remove it from the colony. It's not going to actually impact the ability for the colony to keep doing what it's doing. And we've applied that same principle of making sure that you don't have to trust any single entity with the authority over a system, with the authority over decrypting sensitive data or granting access to something, in using a cyber herd or a swarm of servers, if you will.
Okay, and I'd like to bring Yuval in on this part. I want to sort of like expand that and ask you what what sort of steps need to be taken to achieve this level of that that collective defense, that herd or swarm in this case. So you use that term, level of security. Do you have anything to add on that, Yuval?
So, in terms of what are the steps that a customer or an individual can do in order to achieve the protection of a swarm protection, is first of all to do a self-assessment of what is the biggest has the biggest potential to compromise my security. But unlike any other assessment that's currently being used, like pointing elsewhere, what holes in the fence do I have, or what other people can do to what are the evil hackers can do to compromise me, we suggest actually to look internally. How can I pose the biggest threat to myself or to my organization? And the biggest answer there comes from usually a belief system. So I trust myself to hold the best secrets for myself, the best passwords, the best keys. I trust my CTO to hold to maintain the infrastructure in the best way possible for the interest of my company or myself. I trust Cisco, Microsoft, Palo Alto, Checkpoint to do everything they can to prevent hacking. But this trust is completely blind. I have no way of verifying that. I have no way to verify that the password that I keep very, very securely in my notebook, in my safe, never been breached, never been compromised. I don't know if someone else has access to it, because if they do, I wouldn't know about it. So I would say the first step that people need to do is to assess how they and the people that in the object that they trust can pose a threat to their security. What happens if that trust is proven to be misplaced? What kind of damage is caused if my CTO goes rogue or get compromised? And usually the answer to that is the complete devastation. It's game over completely. There's nothing left. If I get compromised, if CTO get compromised, no, there's no steps after that because it's all gone. This is where cyber herd immunity comes to play. This is where it says no, because once you identify those root of authorities, where you have those centric points where the godlike power exists, this is where you can take the first step of solving it and removing that authority from where it is and protecting it with the herd, protecting the authority outside of where it's currently been held, and held it with something that you don't need to trust because you can verify.
Because it sounds like what I'm sort of hearing is like I'm getting sort of two almost separate analogies from if we're taking the case of invading a fort. Once you've invaded the fort, it's game over. Whereas in the case of like we're saying like a herd, no one individual is going to make the whole herd fall down. And if you go back to that ant analogy, if you're taking one individual ant out, it's not going to affect the whole herd or swarm of those ants. So it sounds like that those sorts of differences are there.
Yes. And one of the biggest challenges that we had is most people think of cybersecurity in physical world metaphors, forts, fences, guards, tracking. Where the digital world can be looked like that, but it's the wrong way to do that, because in the digital world, a person doesn't have to traverse a path to get from point A to B. In the digital world, a person can just appear in point B. In the digital world, a person can be masquerading as another person and no one will know it better. And we believe that the first step is in our journey was to think about cybersecurity differently. If we had to reimagine security in the digital world that is not aligned with the physical world, how would we do that? And in that world, the fort doesn't exist. In our world, the fort manifests when you need it. You need to go to the armory to get a weapon. The armory appears and hands you a gun because you have the privileges. But anyone can walk to the armory because they will find nothing there. They don't have access to the thing. So instead of thinking of it as a fort that exists with walls around it and guards, think about a place that anyone can walk through and anything. They just can't touch anything. They can't manifest anything because it's not there until the point that you need it. This is where digital world comes into play. Think about virtual reality or mixed reality in the sense that the thing that you can see in the virtual reality doesn't exist until you get there, and then it renders or manifests in front of your very eyes. And when you think about cybersecurity and implication, this kind of philosophy does to that, you start to think building walls around something that doesn't exist is futile. Actually, the whole idea of walls and guards, if I can't verify they're not being compromised, what's the point? Which brings me to a different question: is how did we get to that? How do we actually see that this is a problem? And we saw this as a problem by looking at the numbers. 10 years ago, the damage that was caused by cyber breaches was around $90 million globally. And this year, it reached 10 trillion. It's 10 trillion US dollars damages in cyber damages around the world. That's the damage to the economy. Where the market has reached also groundbreaking figures of $300 billion investments in cybersecurity solutions. So how is it possible when this year is the year that was the most invested in cybersecurity, still the damages was exponentially higher? It points to one inescapable conclusion. Whatever people are doing with cybersecurity, it's not working. It's simply not working. And people still adding more trenches and adding more surveillance and more walls and more policies. There's nothing. Because what kind of security can these offer if your CTO or your IT team is the one compromising your environment?
Yeah, and I think like at that, what you just said there goes to that aspect, like even the analogies and the language you're using around it is demonstrating a certain mindset or frame of mind that we have towards even thinking about these problems. So it's interesting that even just offering a different way of thinking allows you to uncover and solve some of the challenges there, or at least attempt to solve some of those challenges. But I wanted to ask, and I'd love to bring you in, Michael, on this one, is, by taking this herd immunity approach, I wonder, are there any sort of like ethical considerations or ethical questions that come up from the point of view of, say, like when it even comes to privacy and collective security? Is there any sort of like questions that are raised there, do you think?
Probably the most interesting ethical question arises on the side you wouldn't expect, because if you approach access control and digital ownership in a decentralized way, it traditionally puts all of the power in the hands of the owner, the individual who holds the only key to unlock it. Our approach to decentralizing access control by making sure no one has access to the key can solve some of the problems that you have in the traditional decentralized environment, which is where you have highly regulated industries where you need lawful interception, for example, to prevent terrorist attacks. How does that happen when those central authorities no longer have any ability to police or to monitor? With a key that no one ever holds, that key can be told to behave in a way that it allows for lawful interception with the relevant oversight and protocols that you would need to enforce something like that, and where relevant grants grants individuals control and transparency on how their data is being used. So the traditionally approaching things from a decentralized way creates problems in policing, in enforcement, in transparency, which is why we put a lot of thought into making sure that we're kind of answering, we're solving both problems in the most compelling way.
Yeah, that's great. Like you're already starting to touch on one of the things I wanted to ask around, which was how does this get integrated into those heavily regulated areas like, you know, policing, in health and in finance and things like that. And maybe Yuval, you might want to jump in on this part here. How does that get integrated? Like Michael was touching on the policing side of things, but I'd love to hear it also from like those other areas, say like health and finance as well.
So a lot of the regulatory paradigm in those infrastructures comes from making sure that steps are being taken, making sure that measures are being taken to guarantee some sort of result. In our space, it's cybersecurity results, financial results, humanitarian results, where the way that we thought about our technology is, what if we could deliver those results effortlessly? What does it mean? It means, what if by embedding our technology into a platform that is being used by a health organization or by a law enforcement organization, they get all those benefits as an inherited value. They don't need to think about it. And so we build our entire technology to just operate by mere adopting it and then give all this benefit, so the developers and the company don't need to think about it, don't need to worry about cybersecurity. The entire concept about tied technology, about tied, what we call it, cyber immunity, or the cybersecurity fabric that we offer, is to allow all this protection mechanism to become seamlessly embedded into the platform, into the system, into the health organization, into a financial organization. So the developers and the users don't need to think about it. They don't need to worry about cybersecurity hygiene, password protection, password rotation, storing they don't need to worry about all this. They have like this, in a maybe derogatory term, but you can think about it as a babysitter that is just, let me take all the dangerous guns away from you so you don't kill yourself accidentally. and we'll make sure you're protected. And this is a promise you don't have to believe, because you can verify. So there's no need for trust in Tide. Tide cannot pose a threat to the company as well, because again, it's all controlled by mathematics. It's verifiable. So we ourselves are not a supply chain threat in that paradigm. You don't have to trust Tide like you have to trust other vendors, because it's all out in the open. It's all verifiable.
Yeah. Okay. So there's that, like removing that layer of risk from even that point in the supply chain, which is good to know. I want to turn the conversation a little bit more to like another key aspect that both of you gentlemen are known well for, and that's the this concept that's been dubbed ineffable cryptography. And I know both of you have been recognized in the industry for this breakthrough technology, which has been dubbed that term. Could you explain a bit what is actually meant by the term ineffable cryptography and what makes the technology behind that so groundbreaking?
Yuvi, I'll let you take this one.
With a background, then we can dive in. We can start with the term. The term ineffable cryptography suggests a cryptography system that is too big or is too divine, in a sense, for anyone to meddle with it. Meaning it's unattainable, in a sense. It's uncompromisable. And to say uncompromisable in an academic cryptographic way is blasphemous, because you can never say that. Everything's theoretically compromisable. But we meant it in a way that it's not compromisable in the standard term, where the user themselves pose the natural risk to the whole system. We took the biggest threat in cryptography, where we eliminated the concept of the secret, the private key. Every aspect of cryptography, every cryptography system out there is based on the fact that someone has a secret, has a private key that they use to secure stuff, to lock stuff up, and then use the same key or similar key to open it up again. Every cryptographic mechanism that ever existed is operating based on this assumption and is secure by the mere assumption that that key is safe. But reality shows that the key is never safe. It was never safe in the first place. It can be compromised by many factors. If you are securing your house with a house key and you're assuming, okay, the house is secure as long as I have the key, well, how do you know that you're the only one with that key? You hope so. So we said, what if we create a cryptographic system that doesn't have a key? A cryptographic system that has all the properties of cryptography. You can lock stuff, you can unlock stuff, you can sign, verify it. But the concept of a private key doesn't exist somewhere. It doesn't held by someone. It doesn't being used by anything in one place. Therefore, it's a key that can never be stolen, can never be compromised, can never be lost. And once you remove this threat of the key itself to be lost or to exist even, you remove so many threats from the system that opens up an entire universe of possibility. Allows a whole new level of what we call the trust paradigm. Because now you can absolutely do stuff with a guarantee that not even yourself can compromise.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Because it sounds like from what you were mentioning there, from the traditional framework of cryptography, that there is a lot of built-in assumptions. For example, that nobody else has that key. Where this is removing that layer of risk to it, right? Is that part of what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Especially because it's been proven that all the big breaches were because of someone nefarious got a hold of that key, of that secret. They got a hold of this access, the secret that was supposed to be held secret wherever, was proven to be false.
Yeah. Okay. And how does this approach to cryptography play into the larger cybersecurity picture? You're mentioning earlier, Yuval, how even both of you, how you decided to tackle the large challenge was based on the numbers. Going from 10 years ago or so, 80 million in losses to over 10 trillion now. How does this approach to cryptography aim to address some of those challenges there, where fitting into the larger picture?
In 2022, there was a series of the biggest breaches that happened in history, the digital world, where companies like Microsoft, Nvidia, Samsung, and the list goes on, were breached, where the top secrets was just taken from under the noses of all the cybersecurity mechanism that they had in place. Those are the biggest companies in the world, the most secure facilities. And a gang of hackers called lapses made it through all the defenses, grabbed the biggest secrets. In terms of, for example, they got the latest design of the Samsung phone and just stole everything under their noses. And the most embarrassing part of that story is that this gang was led by a 16-year-old boy from Oxford, Britain, that lived with his mother. Now, they didn't use any sophisticated mechanism to hack into any of those organizations. They simply went on public forums and offered monetary reward to executives. Give us your access credentials and we'll give you $1,000. And depends on the size of the company, that's how they got. And that's how they managed to breach every company in their path. There's not a single company that withstand that attack vector. Because the belief was those people are trustworthy. This is an impeachable, impregnable path to get to an organization. Our path to solve cybersecurity problems is to remove those base assumptions. To remove the assumption you can trust a single person with a godlike access to your infrastructure. To remove the assumption you can trust a vendor, like even Microsoft, AWS, Google. It's not because they are flawed, it's because there's always a way to get around and to still, even in those companies, the root access. Somehow, somewhere, someone has those accesses. We want to remove those based assumptions of blind trust and replace it with verifiability. So you don't hold those authorities. You don't hold the root keys to the kingdom anywhere. You need to hold it in somewhere that you know cannot be breached. So we had to invent a new technology, mechanism, paradigm to hold those secrets with a guarantee that it can't be exposed, or at least it's extremely hard.
Yeah, right. And what my understanding is, based on some of the things that both of you have written, that it's from a developer's point of view, it's really exciting. And I'm a layperson, so I don't quite understand why it would be. Could you sort of explain why, from a developer's perspective, it's this type of approach is exciting? And maybe Michael, you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah. So I used to run a development agency, and our value add was building really good products with the right features, with the right user experience. But now developers have to worry about security. They have to become security experts, and they're not security experts. And even when you are a security expert, you still can't seem to maintain security inside even the biggest, most well-resourced organizations. So developers who are, rushing to push the next feature commit, and release the next fantastic feature on their product to their audience, are worried that when they do that, they're going to end up on the front page of TechCrunch for all the wrong reasons, because they're going to get breached. As a SaaS provider, you're hosting sensitive data for tens or thousands of customers, and it's a catastrophic event. And that keeps people up at night. And more recently, developers themselves, like individuals that have that authority that Yuval even referenced earlier, that they're being bribed, but they're also being chased into their personal life. So you have attackers breaching, like in the LastPass breach. Turns out there were 4 DevOps engineers in LastPass, the password manager, whose job is to keep all of your passwords safe in their super secure SaaS platform. One of the 4 DevOps engineers was chased into his home, compromised on his home computer inside his home environment, waited till he logged in remotely to his work environment, and that's how so individuals are now walking around with the target on their back. The more privilege you have in a system, the greater that target. And if you're inside of working for Microsoft or Google, you've got state actors, looking at that, painting that target on you. And that's something that no one wants. And it's frankly a massive diversion from what that value add is, which is we build beautiful products that are going to make a difference to your business when you use this thing. So we're a godsend for developers who want to build rapidly, innovate without having that constant worry of, did I misconfigure that server? Is there a bug that's going to end up in a mass data breach that's going to end my company? So that's why we kind of our entire go-to-market is through platform developers, because we solve a massive and acute problem for them, and that benefit then on flows to their customers and end users of their customers.
Yeah, wow. No, I can really see that. Like you said, like just taking a massive weight off their shoulders to like completely mitigate those risks, especially, like you said, if they're not security experts themselves. It's like a minefield just trying to navigate that, I can imagine. So, yeah. But yeah, I want to, since we've been talking both about cryptography and herd immunity, and it sounds like there is an overlap there. Could you talk, both of you, like a bit about that intersection of how those two concepts come together to what at least seems apparent to me to sort of encompass what your collective philosophy and approach to cybersecurity is?
Yeah. So,
Up to you, Val. Yeah.
is it okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
to keep Michael's throat check. For us to solve one of the biggest problems in cybersecurity, we set to find the best protection for the deepest secrets in any organization, any development platform. And it doesn't matter if those secrets are keys or if those secrets are actual assets or digital access or currency or financial record or health record. Our aim was to find a way to lock it, to secure it. And when we surveyed the market, even the most secure solution, which is called vaults, digital vaults, were found to be easily breached if you have access to it. So if it's set somewhere, or held by someone, or managed by someone, that means it was accessible by that someone. So we set up to on a path to say, how about if we create a network that is holding those secrets? How about if we take the secrets and dissolve it in the network so the network can operate as its own organism, like a brain firing in neurons. Each neuron means nothing, but the whole brain as a whole has consciousness and can operate. We then had to solve the problem of how do we get this brain to operate so none of the neurons, none of those nodes posing a threat. That's where cryptography came into play. We had to build a new mechanism to mathematically allow that to happen, so none of the cogs in the machine, even if it breaks, if it goes completely malicious, even a big portion of it goes wrong, can't compromise the information in that network, in that brain. And this is how we came with ineffable cryptography. So it was the cryptography layer, the math, that allows us to build a whole mechanism that stores secrets in the ether, in the cloud, in a network that not a single node can compromise.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Like, and you can really see how it leads you down that particular pathway, and it's sort of leading me to the end of this conversation. And the way I would love to close it out, and I can start with yourself, Michael, is I'm wondering if you could share like sort of like a personal story or experience that has really, really shaped your understanding of cybersecurity and how it's led to these ideas of cryptography and herd immunity as well.
Sure. I'm sure Yuval's most interesting stories were as head of R&D in cyber intelligence, which he can't share. So I'll share one that that actually is common to both of us. Our first business venture together was not Tide. Tide was actually born out of the previous venture. So we created an IoT marketing and analytics platform. So we created this platform that powered pharmacy loyalty programs. So consumers using connected health devices like Fitbits, smart blood pressure monitors, smart homes could keep doing their real life behaviors, and then organizations who want to talk to them through real life behaviors could have more meaningful engagements together. So that was our initial product. And we were selling it to pharmacy chains in Australia. We sold it to Kellogg's. And as we moved up the value chain in Kellogg's, a few things happened that kind of culminated in this realization for us. One is we collected a huge amount of incredibly sensitive information. We could detect early pregnancy from wearable data before people may have even known that they were pregnant.
Wow.
That's a lot to know about people.
Yeah.
When you're sitting on that information. The other thing is on the other side of the coin is we were a small startup in Sydney, Australia, servicing this massive, conglomerate in Kellogg's, and we did deals with Australia. We did deals with the regional office in Singapore. But as soon as there was a high profile opportunity, and it got sent to procurement in the US, they said, no, there's no ways you can work with these guys. I don't care how exciting the opportunity is. They pose a massive risk to us. And this was around the same time GDPR was coming into the fray, and they were sitting on this mountain of data themselves that they were worried about getting compromised. So when we approached them with an alternative, which is to say that what if anyone connecting with our middleware platform, their identity is locked with a key that we don't even hold, so we can't even identify them. We can tell you all these incredible insights about their behavior. If they want to identify themselves to you directly, then they can. We don't pose a risk anymore. We can get breached, and there's nothing an attacker can do because there's nothing we can do without very explicit permission from an individual. So that led to a few interesting things that kind of sent us in this direction. The first one was procurement in the US came back to us from Kellogg's and said, can we license that technology? And then we realized we had solved a much bigger problem with this concept, with this approach than just our own. And if we're solving this problem for Kellogg's sitting on decades of sensitive data from marketing campaigns, we're solving a problem for health tech platforms, fintech platforms, critical infrastructure platforms, the whole gamut. So that's when that for us was a big aha moment and sent us on a journey of trying to find a technology that does enable it. And when we couldn't, thankfully with someone like Yuval and the team, we could invent it. And so that's how we got on this path.
Yeah, fantastic. Maybe like since it's a shared story anyway, Yuval, maybe you could just continue that a little bit. And I'd love to ask you both, what sort of the future of Tide look like?
As we see it, Tide presents a new era in the digital space. The lowest hanging fruit is exactly where we are now in cybersecurity. This technology allows for the perfect combination of privacy protection and cybersecurity that can defend against malicious breaches into personal information theft, identity theft, infrastructure protection, and so forth. But right beyond it, you have opportunities to completely overhaul how the digital world addresses identities of human beings, and even more importantly, how does authority, personal and corporate authority, comes into play? How do you present a power or an agency of anyone through a digital form? And Tide is a massive stepping stone in a world where agency can live in a digital world without compromising the human being. And it can go into further into other aspects, such as managing the future world of the sharing economy, where people are going to be starting to sublease houses in like an Airbnb style to robotaxing, and Elon Musk kind of a vision of self-driving cars that someone owns, but a lot of people operate, and they need to have, you can say, access or ownership in the vehicle for the time that they are in, but after that, it's no longer theirs. So again, access of momentary authority that is represented in that. If someone wants to grab a lawnmower for someone and pay a price in the sharing economy, how do they achieve momentary authority over the device for the duration? After that, it goes away. Tide is the perfect solution for that.
I could probably add some color to that with how our early adopters are using the technology. What we found, and this fully informed our entire go-to-market strategy, is that those looking to solve problems in their own industry vertical, whether it's health, fintech, or critical infrastructure, whatever it may be, they're best to know where this technology, where this capability adds the most value to them. So we offer it as a tool, as a developer tool, and they implement it in ways that make sense for them. And that's exposed us to so many use cases we would never have even thought of. So we have large universities using it to grant students ownership over their credentials and their identities in a way that doesn't lock them into a specific university ecosystem, but recognize the fact that I studied my bachelor's degree here and then I further my studies at another university, or I want to share that credential with a potential employer. I'm the same human being. Why am I locked into a database of one particular university? We're working with a smart metering company that provides smart meters to airports and water facilities. So imagine a smart meter that measures how much chlorine is being poured into the water supply, and the risk of that being compromised by someone on the other side of the planet at a push of a button. And for them being able to, again, focus on building a beautiful product without the risk that they potentially pose with the carte blanche access they would otherwise have to their own infrastructure. Or one of the most recent ones is an AI startup that supports, facilitates the process of KYC, KYB, AML for financial services. So they trawl over, huge volumes of documentation, very sensitive information from company documents, identity information, but lock each record with a different key. And those keys are then answerable to the owner of the data. So they have full control over who can access it, which financial institutions can tap into it, for regulators to be able to access it under certain conditions. But again, dreaming up these use cases where solving their problems in new and compelling ways.
Yeah, great. So it sounds like there's a lot of, number one, like listening to what's out there and addressing what's currently challenging for certain verticals, but then also, like what you were saying earlier, Yuval, like because of where technology is going in the future and what certain people are imagining and developing and so on, there'll be new sort of exciting things where this kind of technology is useful for them as well. So that's really amazing to hear. But we are unfortunately coming to the end of the episode. But before we do wrap up, how can people find out more about the Tide Foundation, gentlemen? Where can they find out more about that and yourselves as well, of course?
You could jump straight onto our website, tide.org, TIDE.org. And we're currently opening up a closed beta program. So working with a limited number of platform developers looking to build the most secure platforms on the planet. So anyone's welcome to apply there and reach out to us with any questions.
Also on our website, tide.org, we have just published quite comprehensive article in a very friendly, humorous way, describing the need to rethink cybersecurity and introduce cyber herd immunity. So I invite the listener to go there and find out the details and understand themselves, get their heads around this new paradigm.
Yeah, great, fantastic. We'll make sure we've got those links in the description of this episode. But that being said, Michael and Yuval, I really want to thank you for coming on the show, and look forward to future conversations. Hopefully we can keep this dialogue open and perhaps have you on another episode.
Thank you much for me.
Yeah, thanks very much for having us.
It's my pleasure. Thanks very much, gents.